Hello, welcome back again to our Java class. So, today I would like to show you something about string. So, I'm going to create a project. Talk about string class and demo here. So, we have learned so far several classes, and one of them is scanner, and another one is the J option pane that we can use class to get input, output, and input we can use scanner to read in input from the users. We can use J option pane to get input in from the user. Let me just going to type down here, then we can see. So we talk about scanner class, and we use system to pretty much just do display output, right? This is read input and display output. These are classes: scanner class, system class, and we also talk about J option pane, right? You can do this for both to read and display, right, to the dialog box. Now, I want you to understand more about classes here, and today we're going to talk about string class. We know that string is a data type, a string itself, but I was telling you that these are not the primitive data types. We talked about primitive data types last time, right? The primitive data types are byte, short, int, long, which is the integers, decimal, float, double, and char, which is the characters, and boolean. Now, string is also a type. You may see that for the primitive data types, we see all lowercases in front of the type, right? Float lowercase, double lowercase, boolean, and char. But when we talk about a class, they all capitalized. That's why I try to tell you that when you name your class name here, make sure you capitalize the letters like string demo, but I don't want to say string because it's going to be happen to be the same classes in the system library, in JRE system library here, that are existing. Then it's going to complain, like if I try to do that. It may not complain at this time, but when you write a program to use it, you're going to be in trouble. Let's say public static void main, like try to avoid using the same class name that the library already declared for you. Now, yeah, that's not a good idea to use. So I'm going to rename this. So to rename this, we go to refactor. If you look at Java in Eclipse, we have refactor and rename. So I'm going to just name string demo instead, because we want to avoid confusions here, and when you start to have it a lot, then you see it's going to cause you trouble. Now, let's learn something about this. So it's just refactor. Now, let me close that and reopen. It should have this new name now. Alright, so since string is a class, so string should have an access to the method of the class, just like the way that we used to do, like when we use scanner, we have an access to the method by using, we have keyboard, right? And then dot. We call dot operators here, and this is access to a method. One of it is use delimiters. Dot next int, right? So that's how we get access to a method. So same, like if we dealing with string, string, and I'm going to instantiate it just like the way that we used to do instantiation here. In the scanner, we just instantiate the object. So so far we know that we can say first name. We can just initialize the values like my first name is tennis, like that, to the string. Okay. But you can also do another way because this is a class. That means you can do instantiation. Okay, this is the statement that we call instantiation. Okay, right, create an instance. So this one we declare a variable and initialize the value, right? Variable name is first name, initialize value is tennis. Now instantiation is you create an instance name, let's say last name, and new, right? This is the way to instantiation with the new operators. And we're going to call the constructor, which is the string itself, and pass the value, which is initialize the value to instance, right? So we do instantiation and initialize the value, right? And that's the value, right, to the constructor. So this is called a constructor, right? This is scanner constructor. This is a string constructor. It's very important to know this word. So we're going to use it later again and again. So at this point, just know that this is called constructor, and this is a whole statement called instantiation. And we initialize the values through the constructors, right? So like scanner, you initialize the system.in, that means read input, right, as initial values for the keyboard. Then we can get input from the user through the keyboard. Now, I initialize the value last name to the variable's name or instance name, right, last name. All right, so we know that since this is a class, like the way to access to the method of the class, we say we can use dot operators. So through the instance name. Like for example, if I want to say last name dot, these are the list of the methods that we can use. There are a lot of them. So you should read the Java doc for the string class. Like for example, if I want to look at a char at, so this is how to use this and how to read this. So to use this is part of a Java doc to explain the definitions of these methods. Or function in Java we call method. Okay. So first it's going to need a parameter. Like this need to take a parameter as an integer int. Okay, and the name of parameters is index. Okay, and it's after the colon here is going to say it's going to return a characters back as the char type. All right, and this is a method from the string class. All right, let's look at the index a little bit in an array. I mean, in a string. Okay, so let's look at this name again. Okay, so I'm going to explain this in the comment section. So the first letters, the capitalized K has an index as 0. A has an index of 1. N has an index of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? And so on. Like n here is going to be 10 and 11, right? So I'm going to say that's 10, and this is going to be 11, and this is going to be 12, and 13, and 14. All right. So now we know that we have an index starting from 0 to 14. And we also notice that my last name has the length of 15 characters long. Alright, so let's see. We want to see maybe first the length of this guy last name. We have an access to the method name length. See? So let's see how do I use that. I just type len. It's going to filter out all the methods that start with le, and then there's only one method left. There is no parameters passing in. Okay, it's going to return an integer back. So let's see if I say length. So since it's going to return an integer back, I need to declare, right, an int, maybe size, okay, or last name size, right? So it's going to return just like the same way that we like to do when we do keyboard.next int returns an int. We declare an integers n1, right, to store the values of int right here. So same way. So what I try to do here is I try to declare an integers, right, last name size, like the name of a variables can be anything, but you like to name something that relevant to the topic that you're dealing with. And then last name size equals 2. So it's going to return the length and last name size variables. You can store that values. So let's see if we get a 15 last name length as 15, right? Out. Let's see if we can run this program. So I have several projects going on now. I need to make sure that I run the right one, which is click on the right one, right Windows. Static void main string. Ooh, that's the problem. When I do refactor, it's confusing. You see that? That's why I cannot run it. It says not seeing the main. That's why we don't want to name this the same as this. When I do refactor means rename it, having to change this again. So that is another problem. So I fixed that. Alrighty, so I just run the output is 15. Right, so I have the last name long as 15. So now that works. So let's get to see about another method. Like let's test with last name dot char at. So char at is, let's just explain how to index. So let's see if I say index 14. Like I said, it's 15 length long. It's index starting from 0 to 14. That's going to give you 15. If you put 15 here, you're going to get an errors. Okay? Because, let's see, if I try to get 14 first, I show the errors. Now, what is the data type that we're going to get back? Char, right? It's telling you it's going to return char. Right? Right here, it's telling you here too. Or when I do the dot char at returns char. So that's why I need to declare char, right? To use index 14 and end statement with semicolon. So char, let's say this is going to be a letter as the name, okay, to be able to store the returned values to the letter. So let me try to do system.out and do the letter. So since you're beginning to do the programming, it's a good thing to keep declaring this, because you may, there's a good practice. You don't want to get confusing. Just declare any variables that you want to use to store the values that you get returned from each methods from the class. So that's a good practice for now for the beginners. And it's always good to do that too. So let's run the program. So I get the letters or the characters at index 14, which is I back. So that's how we use char at. Now, the next thing is let's explore more. We have last name dot compare to. All right, so compare to means it's pretty much going to compare, okay, this string to another string. So it's looking for, you see, you need to pass in another string inside the parentheses here when you use this method, and it's going to return an integer. Okay, so what does it mean is when you compare this, it's going to return some number for you. Okay, and in this documentation, it's going to explain when it returns result is zeros, that means they're equals. Okay, when you get zero back, that means they're equals. Okay, otherwise, if you keep reading this, it's going to tell you that, I'm going to summarize this for you. It's going to tell you that it's either going to return the negative numbers or positive numbers, depends on which one has come before or after. I'm going to show you what it means. Like for example, if I want to compare my last name to another letter, let's declare another string. Okay, last n ame 2, last name 1, last name 2, to new string. And since I create two instances, okay, I'm going to make it the same. Now I change the name of instance. I need to change this name too when I use them. And I try to compare to last name 2, which is a string type passing in. This is good. And it's going to return an integer, so we're going to declare an integers to say compare result as an integers, and then after comparing, it's going to pretty much just returns that and storing to compare result. All right, so now let's print it out to see what happens. Compare result. So the output I just happen to put on the left screen here. You can always move that. 0, that means it's exactly matched, is equal. Right? Now, like I try to say next, I want to show you, for example, I changed last name to, okay, I'm going to change Let me do last name 3 here. So what comes after K? L. Okay. So my last name changed to Lanchana Wanchai. Okay, instead of Kanchana Wanchai. Alright, so let's start to compare. So I'm going to say last name 1 compared to last name 3. And let's look at the compare result. Okay, now I don't want to keep declaring the compare result 1 and 2 and 3. I can actually use it too. After it does the compare result from the beginning, it's going to output that should be 0, and then this should be the difference, right? Because they're different. So let's see what's the difference number is going to look like. -1. Because when you compare last name 1, you have K, right? Starting with K. And last name 3, you have L. Compare 1 to 3, you know that K is lower than L by 1. That's why it's -1. Because L comes after K. So that's why L is greater than K. That makes sense? So same thing if I do comparing what's come before K. We all know the answer is going to be J. So I'm going to create last name 4 and put my last name change again to Jan, like January. That looks like good last name, Jan Chana Wanchai. Alright, so come to compare it. Now I'm going to keep comparing and keep printing out. Then I just copy and paste the code, save some time for typing. So let's see. Can you guys guess what we're going to get out? That's correct. So we're going to get +1 because J is less than K by 1, right? Again, what's come before J?